evening. Welcome to Hungry Ghosts. Jared McGinnis. This is not a voice I'm putting on for Halloween. This is happening to me in real time, so it sounds really spooky. It starts squeaking like Mickey Mouse. I apologize. Tonight we have a great show. This is hosted by Asia House Bagri Foundation Literature Festival. My name is Jared McGinnis. I represent the Special Relationship. Work together to put a nice night for you guys. It's gonna be spooky. It's not gonna mess you up for life. Human centipede. So if you're worried about that, we're kind of more on the spooky, the supernatural. But we're telling stories from across the Asian diaspora, and I think you're gonna enjoy it. So shall we begin? All right. So please give me a big round of applause for our first reader, Xiaolu Gua.
I was expecting you would sing a horror song, but now I have to, do some karaoke. Thank you for coming here rather than knock on the door, get some chocolate. So I was thinking, my part is going to be a little bit serious, but hopefully after me, it gets better and more fun. Before I read, I want to introduce this really the most important ghost writer from China, but so he lived 300 years ago between Ming Dynasty and the Qing Dynasty, and his name is Pu Songling. I think some of you would know his work very well. So this man was born 350 years ago in China, and his biggest dream, as any Chinese man at that time, is to become Mandarin, which means official Mandarin served in the imperial court in Beijing. But he passed a few exams in the provincial level, but he didn't pass a high level. So then, as all the Chinese men at that time, he drank and he wrote the ghost story. And he yearned for the recognition from the society. So this famous book is called Liao Zai Zhi Yi. In the West, it's called Strange Tales from a Chinese Studio. And in China, always, I think, not much ghosts, but all the ghosts are animals, so mainly two types, snake or fox. And they're often very beautiful, sexy, dangerous women ghosts, but they live as kind of immortal snake or fox. So, but this one I was going to read is neither snake or fox. Is about in the Chinese tale Pu Songling wrote, when someone dies, it took 7 days to separate your soul from your body, and then the body become corpse. So this is of course translated 100 years ago by an Englishman. The translation I'm going to read straight away, but it's slightly strange. So for me, it's even more interesting to read an ancient Chinese text translated with ancient English language. Well, not that ancient, but it's very formal for me to read through. So this is not my text, but Pu Songling from Strange Tales from a Chinese studio. And this section is called Raising the Dead. So, Mr. Tang Ping, who took the highest degree in the year 1661, was suffering from long illness, when suddenly he felt, as it were, a warm glow rising from his extremities upwards. And by the time it had reached his knees, his feet were numb and without sensation. And before long, his lower part of his body were similarly affected. Gradually, this glow walked its way up until it attacked the heart. And then some painful moments ensued. Every single incident of Miss Tang's life from his bodyhood upwards, no matter how trivial, seemed to surge through his mind, borne along on the tide of his heart's blood. At the revival of any virtuous act of his, he experienced a delicious feeling of peace and a calm. But when any wicket passed before his mind, a painful disturbance took place with him, like oil boiling and fretting in a cauldron. He was quite unable to describe the pains he suffered. However, he mentioned that he could recollect having stolen, when only 7 or 8 years old, some young birds from their nest, and he have killed them. And for this alone, he said, boiling blood rushes through his heart during the space of an ordinary mealtime when he was a child. Then, when all the acts of his life had passed one after another in panorama before him, the warm glow proceeded up his throat, and then, entering the brain, issued out at the top of his head like smoke from a chimney. By and by, Miss Towns' soul escaped from his body by the same opening hole and wandered far away, forgetting all about the tenement it had left behind. Just at that moment, a huge giant came along and, seizing the soul, thrust it into his sleeve, where it remained cramped and confined, huddled up with a crowd of others, until existence was almost unbearable. Suddenly, Miss Towns reflected that Buddha alone could save him from this horrible state. And forthwith, he began to call upon his holy name, Buddha, Buddha. At the third invocation, he fell out of the giant's sleeve. The soul lay there for some time, but not knowing in which direction to proceed. And however, it soon recollected that the land of Buddha was in the west, and westwards, accordingly, it began to shape its course. And in a little while, the soul came upon a Buddhist priest sitting by the roadside, and he broke a willow branch in the vase beside him, and pouring a little water upon the ground, he made a clay, and then, casting the whole over Miss Tang's soul, bade an attendant lead the body back to the place where his coffin was. At that instant, Miss Tang's family heard a groan proceeding from within his coffin. And then, he had then been dead 7 days. So that's really strange, because I thought the 7 days concept is from Christian culture, Bible culture. So here also 7 days. What are we doing, our soul and body, for 7 days, but not 8 days, not 6 days? So this is an interesting coincidence. Maybe Pusonglin was a Christian. We don't know. So anyway, so this is like the little cultural introduction, how we learned the ghost story from those ancient Chinese books. So this bit I will read from my memoir, Once Upon a Time in the East. Very much so, so animal tales, ghost stories. In China, it's all, I guess in the West the same. It's all oral. It's very much oral tradition, said by our grandparents. And everybody's grandmother, I'm sure, she is a good oral historian, because the grandmother always contains all these memories about all the tales. And also, because I think I remember my grandmother, she was a Buddhist, but at that time, in the 70s, 80s, Buddhists very much live in this superstitious ritual practice mixed with Taoism practice. So it's very mysterious and very, very scary. I think for children it's kind of forbidden, but very seductive area. And I remember I hated entering those Buddhist temples with my grandmother, but also I wanted to see what's inside. So this conflict, painful conflict, to try to understand what's the ghostly world about. So this little bit is from my memoir. So I was about 6 years old or 5 years old. I entered this huge village theater. to watch this traditional Chinese opera called Madame White Snake. And if you knew Chinese opera, traditional one, this one called Bai She Zhuan, is very well known. Okay, and actually the White Snake Lady, the tale was from my province, which is Zhejiang province, south of Shanghai, south of China. Okay, so that's from her little child's understanding and a bit of her language. A white snake spirit lives deep in the waters of West Lake in Hangzhou, one of China's ancient imperial capitals. She has been practicing Taoist magic arts for centuries, when one day a young medicine man named Xi Shan crossed over a broken bridge. By accident, he drops a packet of herbs into the water. The white snake swallows the medicine and gains another 500 years worth of magical powers, drawing together her and Xi Shan's fates in the process. But another spirit, this time of the tortoise, is also desperate to be immortal and thus grows jealous of the white snake's powers. To please the medicine man, the white snake transforms herself into a beautiful woman in a silky white dress and conspires to bump into the young man on the bridge in the rain. He lends her his umbrella, and the pair fall in love, and then they get married. In the meantime, the total spirit has accumulated enough powers to take human form, and he transforms himself into a Buddhist monk called Fa Hai. He approaches Xi Shan and tells him to give his wife sorghum wine during the Dragon Boat Festival, which turns the wife back into a white snake. And her delicate husband dies of shock upon realizing her true identity. At this point in the story, I had already been at the opera 3 afternoons in a row. The white snake then travels to Ermei Mountain, where she steals a magical herb that can bring her husband back to life. But Fa Hai, the Buddhist monk, the tortoise, is a spiteful man. He tries to separate the happy couple again by imprisoning Xi Shan in Golden Mountain Temple. But Madame White Snake uses her powers to flood the holy site and rescue her husband. So the couple give birth to a son and called him Men Jiao, meaning dreaming of a dragon. It's a very ambitious name and promised much later in the story. But the evil tortoise turned monk will not be defeated, and so he fights Madame White Snake and traps her in the pagoda. At the end of the 5th day, the drama reaches its climax. The story jumps ahead 20 years as Menjiao, the son, scores the top result in the imperial examination. Triumphant, he returns home to visit his parents, defeats the monk, and frees his mother. The family is now united. But the monk flees and returns to the bottom of the lake. Fearing punishment, the monk, the tortoise, he hides inside the stomach of a crab. A legend has it said the yellow part inside the shell of the crab is his evil body. My heart still hung in the air, and I was in a state of nervous excitement as the opera ended. I had watched the actors eating a banquet of steamed crab on the stage. But wouldn't the tortoise-turned crab spirit manifest himself in everyone's stomachs? Or was it all hinting at trouble yet to come? The happy family would never truly be happy because one day their stomachs would cramp and perhaps they would all die from the pain. So never eat the stomach, the yellow bit of a crab. So actually this was a true thing that all the villagers believed when I was young, or at least some villagers believed. I always feel very scared to eat a crab because you're gonna have this tortoise Buddhist monk in your belly. So that's the beginning of tonight, and I hope the rest going more interesting.
There's Shalugwa. Next up, we have Kairani Baroka. Give it up.
Hello. Thank you all for coming, and thank you, Shalgo, for that wonderful story of seafood gone wrong, which we will all surely remember. I certainly will. So I'm going to do a few different things tonight. The spookiest thing in the world, an Ed Sheeran medley. No, I'm just kidding. No, he's not here, is he? So tonight is actually the 1-year anniversary of my first poetry collection, Rope, which came out on Halloween last year. And I wore a witch's hat that I just found last year, like a black witch's hat. And this year I decided to go silver, but I was not expecting Liberace. So I quite enjoy this. I'm going to read you a few poems from this first, and then a one-off poem from a new anthology that's just come out called Spells, and close with my first book, Indigenous Species. So first, I'm going to read you a poem called Sakina. So, to preface this, I am from a culture called Minangkabau in Indonesia, West Sumatra, and it's the largest matrilineal culture in the world. But somehow growing up, all the myths I learned from Minang culture of women were of women as assassins. Like, I'm just going back, I'm like, she kills somebody, she kills somebody, she kills somebody. So those were my role models. So Malin Kundang is a Minang folktale about an ungrateful son who returns from making his fortune and shuns his mother. This is all preface to this poem. As punishment, she turns him to stone. Sakina, the title of this poem, is taken from the title of a sculpture by Ahmad Osni Pei in Rimbundahan Art Center, Malaysia, who I reimagined as a petrified woman. Sakina. Where was Malin Kundang when you needed him for commiseration? Humans turned mineral artifacts proved difficult to come by around the Malacca Strait. You stand lofty in sun, jungle clearing. Yellow, pale daffodil where the light catches what would have been your shin, your knee, visitors craned up at the curves of your now multiplied necklines during events, obliviously snapping photographs, ears silent to blatant screams. In time, you stopped trying to be heard. What was your supposed sin? Vanity? Lust? Bloodlust? A fetus inside you couldn't bear to hold? Were you too beautiful to have been truthful? Too trusting to imagine being a sculpture for the rest of your days? They never tell us that Malin Kundang had tried to reach his mother many times. It was she who first turned him away. In the night, frogs croak by your ankles. You hum a song for petrified aluminum. So this next one is called Large Canvas, and it was written for my friend Trandan, who enjoys frightening fellow artists. Who here has seen the movie The Babadook? The Australian film The Babadook, yeah, freaky as hell, right? So I was at a residency, the same residency at Rimbundahan Art Center in Malaysia, where I saw Sakina, the sculpture. And we had a Babadook screening in my house. And afterwards, my friend Trandan would make the Babadook sound outside my house at night, which I did not appreciate at all. So as revenge, I wrote him this poem. He's a painter. Large canvas. You are calm that these woods lack safety. Silver motifs and swaying cats, where are the parents? Human children easily sway themselves into the path where eyes are devoured by what's been brushstroked up in the leaves, while you wait for each layer to dry. Tree spirits crawl thick into painted globules. Such representation is alchemy. Cursed potions too run chemical. Take 2 parts of advice with you in archipelagic old growth 1. My father taught us to speak upon entering a new hilly forest alone, an offering of Assalamu alaikum. Peace be for the fanged ones Allah might set upon us. True story. I can't go into a forest without saying Assalamu alaikum. A second warning. Repeat this when you lock up the studio for the night. There are ghosts for whom a gentle salutation might balm an urge to escape the cut of stretched out flax, to pull to the world you've created the cracks of all your fears. Lustrate the oils with voice. I hope that will spook him for life. Babadook voice. Okay. So this is a contemporary nightmare. Steel yourself. F train comes engorging fist first into the belly of the stop like blood from warm places, dripped on the platform and dried. Stoop, girl, that's red you remember and recognize from Friday. You packed a jam sandwich but won't get to eat it now. Just a few meters down and you're holding breath solid, suspended vision in a tunnel of piss, no rain, no sunlight, always 3 a.m. Mother's earrings you leave behind on the dresser in revised historical fantasy, rattling instead clickety-coo under rodents' feet, not so far from your own persistent ankles. This is another contemporary ghost story, but I wouldn't say a nightmare. Some ghosts are friendly. It's called The Closing of the Bones. In the houses they live in afterwards, there is the ghost of a framed shelter within the belly. One she'd laid pliantly to rest, to set things aloft, first setting them alight. This spirit rests with the olive oil on the kitchen counter, and sometimes with the spinach and sambal resting in the bowl painted hot, with red birch trees and colored winds snaking double round them. Air fed with exhalations, the pair carry the bowl from rented vessel to rented vessel of their courtship made solid, like the promise of freedom, like a child they knew shouldn't want to be just yet, to live here now. Abortion ghost. Okay. That's for later. This is called Wednesday's Child. Little captain of my womb, she might have navigated the streams of becoming with claws and iron, held on with alabaster nails to the interstices of uterine walls. Pirate queen, small interlocutor of necessary things, my operatic diva of singing innards, a will I, won't I become. Impossible as break-ins through barricaded armada, as ocean captures of impenetrable raid ships. In the blink of both eyes, I did think her flesh could become as tactile and wet as fresh blood in saltwater fish eyes in porridge. Your staying away was just as well. Ghost child felt all mine. May sunshine to be emerging from hips would have climbed to the bow of the ship, armed to the teeth with an animus of my making, and a dress weft grey from marine winds, kelp, crayfish shells culled from ominous straits, and loved me, told you, get gone. That was my Ursula from the Little Mermaid voice. Last one from Rope. Tsunami pilgrims. We seek out pain in lurid glimpses. Bent palm, shell from Loknga, where waves hit the treetops and deluge the cement plant. Near the leftward curve of the bay, a marooned ship's chemical bullion leaching out into the Indian. Did I sell these things in little jars? Hone memories tongue-wrapped for relatives, repasts, parsed words and round vowels tasting like rawness and salt water. We wrap in plastic an oblong, displayed for the vendors a foible as goodness, and follow others' nightmares here to the sea. So, just recently come out is an anthology called Spells, 21st Century Occult Poetry. It's out now with Ignota Press, new press. I'm very excited to be in it. It includes heroes of mine like Ursula Le Guin and Dorothy Lasky, Kava Akbar, C.A. Conrad, many brilliant poets. And for this anthology, I decided to write about who here has heard of Chani Nicholas. She is an astrologer. One person, yes? Yes, hardcore fan as soon as you know about her, right? Yes. Chani Nicholas is a feminist astrologer, and actually I found out about Chani after watching the movie Get Out. Weirdly, my friends and I sat around at a kebab place until the wee hours of the morning discussing Get Out, as visual cultural researchers tend to do. And we started, my friend told me about Chani Nicholas, and I'm a faithful reader, and I also have taken a few courses of hers, including the moon course. I'm a Libra moon, not relevant, but in any case. So this poem is called What Chani Nicholas Told Me, because basically I wrote her an email, and I said, Chani, I was born with 6 planets retrograde. Woe is me. What is going to happen to my life? And she said, don't worry. What Chani Nicholas told me. The morning my mother gave up on coaxing me out of her vagina, after nearly 2 days, consented to being cut open, I was born in a placement speaking to difficulty. Under the sun's beams, I plucked hymns from wading in the warmth, amniotic sea, and no one was bearing me out unless my home was sliced in 2. How I see Chani, astrologer bursting sun from her bare bones, human and emailing to help with a moon course. I don't crush a lot, just a player. The stars when I emerged, close to the sun, Venus retrograde in Aries, 12th house. I hear from Chani, difficulties here, fallen woman. Chani knows the term is archaic, gives its history from mystifying chart, points to feminist and creative wombs broken, bust open, diminished, disrespected, pushed, slapped red to know one's place like muscly hands. I know Chani, yeah, read me like the salvaged Medusa of nerves my body has become. She speaks of my birth placement as archetype. Venus conjunct sun, retrograde heart of second planet. Chani says, in the myth of Inanna, this is when she dies in the underworld and is reborn. Sometimes the river with its faint whiff of tombs, hand in its water, laughing back at abled prisons, coming into a 33rd year of survivorship, counting from when they slit my belly sky roof and placed my heart like an offering to burn under sun's beams, ripping the Empyrean, befitting an epidermal ceiling. I'd wanted to stay. My orbit of all things rebirths itself. Chani tells me how, but I am ready and already, firmament heavy, beaming back at the burning gashes, mouth trying to be kind, fingers grasping from all my house placements, Taurus rising, half dead, half scorned, half electric, the bull, a symbol of my mother's Minang house, our clan house back in the Tanah Datar village, its roof shaped as horns. My belly sky. Thank you. So, strange coincidences. I am Taurus rising, and my clan animal is the bull, and our clan house is shaped like bull's horns, so it all comes together. So now I'm going to read to you from my first book, Indigenous Species. Close your eyes. just for 3 seconds, and picture yourself on a boat on a river, in a forest. 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you. When you abduct me down the rotten river, you make sure to wrap some rope around the hull, lest the current gets swept into dreaming and the dugout boat loses sight of carvings and knives for the vision of ancestor breath, calling us away from great hulks of islands and into water culled from the saliva of tigers, whose bloodlines we clotted to death on Java, stabbed out of life on Bali. This is an illustrated book. It's a colonial photograph of tigers being hunted to death. When you wrap chloroform in my mouth, we are drifting past open sores of forest, pestilent red wounds, and the trunks exposing great, great grandmotherly rings, the circumferences it takes for rainforest to sprout its many legs of mystery, the soup of a complex resilience, rust bucket water feeding ferocity as green gasps wide and devours canopy, the crazy lush of it tickling away into the ocean. I would tell you this, but you are already knotting one of my ankles tight to the other. We once let the jungle whittle our lives down to habit. Forests sculpting foraging patterns, spice configurations in soups, longhouse architectural trends, how women live with bleeding, what we can't name our children, how we groom the pelt on our bodies, and develop philosophy so astonishing it will be studied by all of 5 anthropologists in one movie theater, frostbitten towns and far-off lands. And drivers in cities the factory built into ash who wish they had more time to know. Alam takambang menjadi guru. That's a Minang saying, nature as teacher and womb, zygote fraternal twin to sapling. When you divorce my arm from my thigh where it rests and pin it to my back in a lock of fingers, I am tempted to tell you how hungry it is making me to feel the tributary wash us in waves left to right. And I don't want to grow old as I paddle down river with the mercury beating down your synapses, eating at your unborn childlings while I close my eyes and look away and pretend girls my age don't live here and won't. You have blindfolded me, but I've been down here before. So I know how there are islands of roots to stand foot on, battling for space and historical worth in the eyes of the species we peacock ourselves to be, with reptiles gargantuan as ignorance, brute big as guilt, and delicate as bird song. Centrifugal humidity swirling into sweltering heat-soaked drenched evolution. Centipedes big as your forearm, orangutan carcass, the feast of this famine. Hard to tell from your silence where you're taking me, but I'm guessing it's loin deep in the place where they're collapsing entire cosmologies into pulp and paper. Where the length of time we can stay where we were bred before our stories turn into proyak and palm oil oozes away, shucking down like lightning the seconds before we leave because we have to. This is a lipstick made out of rainforest. I bet you from the raucous machinery I'm hearing and the smell of rashness that this is where the grease deals are siphoned into miners' food and where they are packing down eons of intricacies and strength from the forest to molecular form on a woman's lipstick bottle in Iowa. The likelihood a child will know not to generalize the word Dayak to one tribe, frittered down to cardboard boxes for the rubbish metropolis of Bantar Gebang outside Jakarta, where kids sift through the money over haste and vomit and they smack their lips. Are you giving any time to the waves of energy I'm sending you from this internal monologue? I'm telling you, mister, don't mess with me. They used to breed tigons and ligers for show. Half orange stripes and half ruddy mane, they bred me the same. Savage, savant, primitive to the ends of my toenails. And so this hatred of wearing heels when they can't be run into the dirt. And that is the point to my thinking of feet. You're not listening to the sounds of my throat. And I'm getting thirsty on this canoe. In Gunung Halimunsalak National Park in 1990, they went on an expedition citing no conclusive evidence of Javanese tigers' persistent existence. But it is easy to dodge discovery by your murderers. Paw prints are easily disguised by species so few as to be sacred. That is the primordial cunning with which I will leave this vessel and report you to the corrupt authorities of my land. Because once upon a time in the century before this, my family lived with tigers who sprang alive from the girth of their own elongated island. Orang utan means human of the forest, and we sent tourists there to rape this species. I wish that I made that up. And this is the kind of anger I will take to slit through this panic and hone my instinct for city locations and relation to waters, and not spend a second on the monster of a false sense of isolation. Because you see, I know there are claws in me from the bullish deaths of millions of fanged things and the tangle of this decapitated place. And I am never lost when I share in an outrage you will find it difficult to imagine from behind any screen. When you sit on a slab of wood in a boat and realize what around you is telling people to get addicted to suicidal plunges, iming gateway handouts, undue heat. I'm of the same blood as the sanctioned mess of invasion that was Javanese transmigration, and I shampoo my hair with oil crafted from dead-end social experiments and gargantuan-scale domestication of hectares, cemeteries of growth, the bonfires of so many canines made lame. When I get away from you, I will have nightmares about menageries and teeth festering yellow in cages, the flesh of unidentifiable femurs and the fire, and I will apologize all the way home for pouring vapor and rot down the necks of Kalimantan, and remember the excesses of forgetting the names of fauna while making tea, singing a song to my niece about dismemberment of fowl above the self-immolating pot. Potong bebek kang sa masak di kuali, nona minta dansa 4 kali. Jolting like a beast awake in the night, with how nothing on a boat is solid when it rests on kidnap and the wrong kind of silt. Thank you.
Thank you, Karane Baroka. Next up, we have a short but frightening film called Rabbit's Blood. Next up, we have Zia Ahmed. Sorry, my voice is definitely going. Please, a round of applause for Zia Ahmed.
Hello. So, I might have misunderstood the thing, but I've written something that I thought was horror and scary to me, and I guess the Asian twist is that I'm Asian. So, alright, this is we'll see how this goes. The sun's already set. The clocks went back. Sunday just went. I fancied a walk and a falafel wrap. There's 3 falafel stalls in the market. One's Sudanese, one's Palestinian, one's Lebanese. There's no consensus as to who rules the roost. Everyone's split in who they choose. It's not like the bagel places. Everyone knows which one to go to, but for the falafel, I go Sudanese. There's something about the chili sauce. Crap, my hat's blown back. A gust of wind. I pick it up. I put it on. The pavement feels sticky underneath my feet. Stop. I rest my foot against my thigh. Put the sole to the sky. There's no gum or anything, so I put it back on the ground. I walk past Mackie D's. Shit. Maybe a filet of fish. Pull out vouchers from back pocket torn out from the metro. Keep walking. Crap, hat blown back again. This wind. Pick it up, put it on, adjust strip, tighten it a bit. Rumble. Thunder. The wind howls. This bare things blowing in my face, so I put my hand in front of my eyes and I look to my side and there's these patches of white. What the hell? I rub it. I sniff it. That flower. Dust. Flowery dust. Close to the market, I'm gonna see if Uncle's about. He's not uncle, just an out of respect uncle. Rumble, thunder, wind howls. Uncle has a stall. Fresh coconuts. He uses a knife like it's a paintbrush, just shells chopped off in strokes and then coconut top cut open. He's Pakistani too, and I taught my broken Urdu to him and he don't make me feel bad about it. Floor still feels sticky on my shoes, so I check again. They're wet, even though it hasn't started raining yet. A sniff, maybe it's just piss. It smells sweet. Whatever. I take the back way into the market, straight to Uncle's stall. There's no one around. Everyone should be closing up now, but maybe they're all gone. Rumble, thunder, shit. I'm pulled into the stall, and my mouth is covered up. The door closes slowly. Shh, better. It's Uncle. His hand drops from my mouth. I turn my body slowly, the hair, he says. Who? I say. We crouch down in the stool. I ain't moving, I hear. Sounds like Wayne. He's at the end of the row, Caribbean calf. I ain't moving. I peek over the side of the stool. You don't have a choice, a voice replies. I can see Wayne, he's talking to 2 people, one's holding a pram. It's too late, the voice says. Wayne goes for him and one of the people shoots something out at him and he's covered in something and then the other person shoots out a flame all over Wayne and he's completely still, like a statue, and it smells burning like toast. Uncle, I say, there's more, he says. What just happened, I say. There's more of them, he says. How many? I say. We've lost a few people tonight, he says. What did they just do? The store door opens and I fall back first to the ground and it's wet. There's fluid on the floor now. And it's bubbling. Rumble, thunder, wind howls. The two people turn around and I hear pram wheels come towards me. Stay, I say to Uncle, and I kick shut the stall door. I crawl away as far as possible. Hello, says a woman holding a pram. A man walking with her. They're both white with thick smiles on their faces. Bright teeth. I saw what you did, I say. Saw what, he says. What do you want? I say, do you work here? She says. What did you do to Wayne? I say. Was that man called Wayne? He says. Wayne wasn't being cooperative, she says. With what? I say. You see, we want what's best for our children, I'm sure you understand, she says. We want our children to grow up in a safe place, she says. I look at the pram and there's a doll. What the hell? That's not even, but it will be, she says. And we can't be having places like this drug then, she says. Nah, fuck you. Nah, we need places for family like ours. That's not real, I say. No one's gonna miss you, he says, and he points his hand towards me, and Uncle comes out with his knife and slices into the man's arm. Run, Uncle says. The woman shoots out fire. I run towards where Wayne was standing. Wayne, I say, and I grab his hand, but it comes off in mine. Fuck. I look at his hand and there's no blood. There's no bone. There's no flesh. It's all bread. What? Bread. They've turned him into bread. I look back and I can't see Uncle, but I see more people, suits and check shirts and trainers with skirts. Thick smiles, straight white teeth. A couple of them start to chase after me. The floor is wet, sticky, bubbling. They're turning it all to bread. I'm out the market. I look back, they're still chasing me. Rumble, thunder, downpour, hailstones. Wait. I put my hand out. It's brown hailstones. I smell. Nice coffee beans. It's raining coffee beans. And the pavement is fermenting and I slip. Shit, there's a cop. I get up down the side road and I hear one shout, "He stole my wallet." The cop joins in the chase. I run towards the estate. Shit, I slip quick. They're catching up. I bet they all run marathons and shit. Trying to get the coffee beans from hitting my face, the smell coming from the pavement. I don't know if I'm gonna, the pavement's bubbling, rising, falling, legs unsteady, stairs. I've made it to the estate. I stand at the top step, catch my breath, and all the suits and check shirts and skirts and trainers and beards I don't believe in stop. They don't enter. They've never set foot in the estate. They never have. I hear the pram. The people part for the woman and the man and their doll. Smiles still fixed. I knock on every door on the ground floor. People come out their flats murmuring and what's going on. These guys, I say, they killed Wayne from the market and now we're all targets. They want us gone. We face off. the man and the woman with the prams smiling, and they raise their hands, and the suits and the check shirts and the skirts and the trainers and the beards do too, and they turn them to the pavement, and the sky rumbles and the ground bubbles, twitches of curtains, and a figure emerges. It's growing from the ground, and they shoot fire and dough from their hands, and it keeps growing and growing. Cars turned over, trees uprooted, and the people keep shooting fire until there it stands, the giant sourdough man. And it walks on the church, and it walks on the mosque, and it walks through the street, and it stands over the tower block, and we watch, and they watch. Cool. I think that's it for now. Yo, just checking on the time. And I don't know how to end that, really. That's, I've got one short piece just to finish. This is about, it's the Bar Manu, which is, I guess it's Bigfoot in Pakistan. It's in like the northern region, like in the mountains. And I'm just gonna start off with a quote. This is Mitch Hedberg. I think Bigfoot is blurry. That's the problem. It's not the photographer's fault. Bigfoot is blurry. And that's extra scary to me because there's a large out-of-focus monster roaming the countryside. Half man, half ape, in between states, in transit, half real, half imagined, hybrid, migrant, hostile environment, alien, beast, guttural scream, in between shapes, permanent blur, always on the move, pinned down features. Look at this unusual creature, half man, half ape, heartache. It's mythical, mystical, in between places, difficult, different, be vigilant. But who? The hunters or Bar Manu? Cool, thank you.
Zia Ahmed. Very good. For our last performer, we have a very special treat for you. It's Vayu Nedu.
Wow, I can't see anything. Would you like to join me with, after I say it 3 times, the same word? Dikita, dikita, dikita. I think that sounds a bit too friendly to get spooked, so could we just start with that lovely low whisper and then raise it? Dikita, dikita, dikita. Boom, boom. Dikita, dikita, dikita. Boom, boom. Okay. Brilliant. Welsh National Opera is going to recruit all of you. When I have come out of my trance in the story and I do that, please say dikita, 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 boom, boom. Okay? Simple. That way I know you haven't fallen off to sleep. I have come out of the trance, and the story's not that bad at all. Deal? Fine. In a deep and dark forest, a man is in exile. He was a prince, but what's the use of a title when you're in exile? It was a deep, tropical forest, and the monsoon was just about to come. So he was looking out at the dark, luring clouds. His wife of some 13 years, that was as long as they were in exile, she had just found some flowers and she was threading them in a garland. The exiled man's brother was up on a tree. And because he was dealing with wood, he was making swords of wood and arrows from slender branches. And he was even piercing certain feathers to give it a fine, swift drift. Somebody was watching, but none of us could see the somebody who was watching. And what did she look like? She was as large as Shoreditch. And her feet were very much like blurry Bigfoot. She had a large cavernous mouth, an eye that revolved like the TARDIS in Doctor Who. And there was blood spewing from every orifice you could imagine. The earwax from her ears coiled right out to Southwark Bridge. And everybody mistook it for pollution, but actually it was her earwax. Her nails were like talons, and they were used to gouge out the liver and the intestine of bear and fox and hedgehog and all other wild animals. She had great big skins around her girth as large as Shoreditch. But when she looked at that man in exile, she said, "Ah, I want him for my husband." Now she was none other than Shurpanakha. Shurpanakha was the sister of the magnificent 10-headed Ravana. He was actually the emperor of the world, but for a certain moment in time, he was located in the jeweled island of Lanka. He ruled the underworld. He ruled the higher world. He could frighten the gods with his amazing standing on his head for 40 years and contemplating. He could swallow fire. He knew every magical art, the 64,000 ways of making love. He was a genius. No one could be in competition. She was his sister. They were of the Rakshasa clan. Can you just say that together? Rakshasa clan. That was so wimpish. I'm working hard here. Rakshasa clan. Tikita, 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 boom, boom. Now, also being a Rakshasa, you can shapeshift. You can transform yourself into anything. And she was intelligent, some ability for self-reflection. What's the size of Shoreditch? What's the size of a handsome young man? So she looked at him and she transformed herself into an exquisite, seductive courtesan. Remember, this is a tropical forest. She had diaphanous veils. She had musical bracelets. She had tinkling earrings. And her anklets resounded like gongs through the forest. And as she walked forward straight to her target, the man looked around and he was bewitched to see such an astonishingly good-looking woman in the forest. But before he could open his mouth to speak, she said, "You there, come and marry me. If you do, I can offer you armies, chariots, elephants, navies." At which point the man could recognize that this was a woman who was bewitching, but she was also of the Rakshasa clan. So he smiled, his dazzling smile. And he said, "I'm so sorry, dear lady, but my heart is already taken." And he gestured to his wife, and she came forward. And his wife Sita thought, "Oh, at last, after 13 years, maybe I will have a female companion in the forest." But Shurpanakha, however glamorous she was, her nature bit. And she said, "Who is the servant girl who comes in our royal matters? I will have you." Just at that moment, the man's brother jumped down from the tree. And he had a sharpened wooden sword. And he said, "Now look." And she said, "I am looking." My goodness. 2 brothers, same family. If he refuses me now, you and I could get married. And she walked with him, her hips so wavy, his heart was pounding. And he looked at her fiercely with anger and loyalty and rage to protect his brother and his wife. And she said, "What are you so afraid of? Look, if you marry me, I can offer you all the things I've offered your brother. And not only that, to the world we shall look married, but I can carry on with the family affair." And the brother looked at her, and she said, "What are you so afraid of? What are you going to do?" Instantly, he took that sword and he chopped off her nose and her ears. The way the blood gushed forth, she came into her original form, screaming and wailing. It was a hurt she could physically bear, but the humiliation wrenched through the air. It shook the earth, and she flew in her form over the trees, across the ocean, and landed with a great big thud in the court of her 10-headed, magnificent brother, Ravana. The earth began to spout fire, and there were rocks falling. The pillars of the big assembly chamber were crumbling. And she said, "Brother, I have always thought of you as the greatest, but look what they have done to me." And Ravana moved forward. And she said, "There I was in the forest. I had heard the woman Sita was there. And I know how much you prized the thought of her. I was going to bring her to you as a prize." And when Ravana heard the name Sita, his heart was racing. He was breathless. It brought back all those memories of how he had tried to win her in a tournament. But she had no eyes for him. She had eyes for that man who was a prince and now lived in exile. Shurpanakha said, "Brother, why don't you avenge this horror they have done to our Rakshasa clan? Bring those 2 men to me. I shall punish them personally." Of course, she thought if she had them in captivity, there would be a genuine case of having them all to herself. But Ravana had no ears for this. He was now striding across the assembly hall. And he found his golden aerial chariot. He got into it. And he flew out of his kingdom over the ocean. And he landed in a part of the forest not too far from where these 3 had been exiled. When he got out of his chariot, he saw his uncle lying there, Maricha, looking rather weak. And he said, "Uncle, I want you to become a golden deer." The uncle didn't protest. He knew his life was going to end. The next day, monsoon was going to break in the sky. Dark clouds luring, the smell of the earth just waiting for its skin to be dampened. The peacock was strutting. There was something in the air, so he had to fan his tail. The monkeys were shrieking, some nervous, some getting ready to mate. Strange, wild things in the air. And there was the woman, Sita. When suddenly she saw a purple dust, it was sparkling. And suddenly when she looked beyond the bush, she said, "Ah, Rama," she called her husband. "It's forest gold, and its spots are gems. Oh, look, it's running away. Please, can you get it for me? I would love, after this exile of 13 years, to keep it in the palace when we return." But he, the husband, was looking at the luring clouds, smelling the damp that was going to come into the air. And he said, "Let that creature go wherever it wishes to." And suddenly she flew into a rage, her hair like serpent tails. And she said, "I have never asked you for anything. Just once in 13 years. I want that golden deer." He was startled, quickly picked up his quiver and his bow and said to his brother, "Take care of Sita. Make sure no beast, no demon touches her." And he ran off, and the deer kept looking at him, wanting him to follow it. And there was Rama, running, strange thoughts in his head. Why did she lose her temper like that? She wanted to come on this exile. Why suddenly only one thing I have asked you? And as he ran, he noticed the deer had tripped over a little stream in the forest, and then it went to a little bush, and then across a mound, and now he was coming to the mountains, when suddenly he realized, this is a shape-shifting Rakshasa. He quickly took out his arrow from his quiver, and he shot it. It struck its mark, and Maricha cried out in a voice just like Rama's. And it reached like an arc of light to where Sita was. And it said, "Sita, help, I'm dying! Lakshmana, save me!" Sita heard it. She began to wring her hands, coil her hair. And she said, "Oh, Lakshmana, I sent my husband to his death. Go, see what's happened. How foolish of me." And Lakshmana very dashingly jumped down from one of the lower branches of the tree, and he said, "Sita, do you think my brother would have been fooled by a shape-shifting Rakshasa? He will come back." And she looked at him, her eyes like angry coals. And she said, "Is this the time you find to make an advance at me?" And Lakshmana said, "Your words are worse than poisoned darts. How could you say such a thing?" Okay, I will swallow my pride. I was here left to look after you. But I will draw around you a magic circle. Stay within it. No beast, no Rakshasa demon can harm you." And off he went with remorse, with pain, with every kind of rage and humiliated loyalty. He ran off in the direction of his brother. There was Sita thinking, a golden deer. I don't know what's happening. It may be that time of month. And as she was looking out, somebody else was watching. It was none other than the magnificent 10-headed Ravana. But of course, he had shifted his shape into a frail mendicant leaning on a staff. And there he gazed on Sita. Gosh, no thing can create that. Look at her eyes. How simple her form, and yet the rage, the fire, the passion in her. He tried to gather himself, and he approached her, but was very careful not to go to that magic circle. And he said, "Dear lady, I'm so thirsty. Please, could I just have some water?" So she swiveled around, got a pitcher of water. And she said, "What on earth are you doing all alone, so frail, unescorted in this forest?" And she was just holding the pitcher when he said, "Oh, I come under the jurisdiction of the great Ravana. He protects everyone." Now the fire was burning in her eyes, and she said, "What do you mean by Ravana? He has brought poison into everyone's hearts. All humankind is in fear. We are all ready to eat each other for anything." And Ravana said, "Well, but that great king Ravana sits on a throne like a king. What about your husband? He's not even here to protect you. I hear he's in exile, wearing tree bark with long hair coiled into a knot over his defenseless head." None of us know till this day what happened. She may have raised her hand to wave aside what this old mendicant that she saw in front of her said. She may have wanted to slap him. But whatever it was, her hand came out of the magic circle. And he dragged her out, shook off his disguise as the mendicant with his 10 resplendent heads. He said, "Now I will take you back and keep you as my hostage till you agree to marry me." He took her in his aerial chariot across the ocean and placed her in a beautiful garden with the most exotic fruits and plants. And she was captive. And there she sat, listening to her heartbeat. Moment after moment, only 2 syllables in it, of her beloved love, Rama. Her eyes were sinking. It seemed like there was always a sunset in them. The bangles on her wrists were now dropping off, so frail she had become. Weeks passed into months. Months were nearly passing into a year. And even Ravana was getting frustrated with himself. He had everything, a huge city underground, a huge city overground in case he would be attacked. But nothing was happening from outside. And she, this woman with her relentless passivity, she would not even look at him. And then he asked himself, "But why am I waiting for her? I have harems of 350,000 women. I can take whatever I want. I can take her. But no, I want her to want me." He had magicians, he had sorcerers, he had astronomers, astrologers. They could turn day for night. Missiles could crack open the most secret vault close to the belly of the earth. So one night he decided, after much drink and clarity of mind, he would play a final trick. His wife was asleep. His 350,000 courtesans breathed peacefully in his golden kingdom. He walked underground into the labyrinthine passages with their metal corridors, their crystal ceilings. All the alarms had been switched off. He came to that little cage where Sita slept. The last whisper of the flame was flickering. Already its hair of smoke was spiraling. She was in a daze. The only thing she could hear in her heart, in her pulse, in her wrists, everywhere in her body was tikita, 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 boom, boom, tikita, 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 boom, boom. He looked at her. Her eyes open. The sunset was sinking in her eyes. Now they were even dry of tears. The sweat from her hair was all that had moistened her face. Her sweat looked like jewels. The tip of her nose, the quiver of her lip. How it enticed this man, and yet she could sit there like a block of ice, gazing at him. And he said, Sita, I have given you so much time. Look at me. And she looked at the ceiling. And slowly, from behind him, he drew out a head, severed, streaming with blood. It was Rama, his eyes vacant and gouged out, his neck chopped, his long hair with blood swimming around Ravana's fingers. Tikita, 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 boom, boom. There's a whole epic after that. I'll come back to tell you next year.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Hungry Ghost. Thank you very much. Thank you to our performers. Thank you to Asia House Bagri Foundation Literature Festival. And me, I'm Jared McGuinness. Thank you very much. Have a good night.